So I teach a first-year course in the Department of English and Writing Studies called Enriched Introduction to English Literature. So what does that course do? It covers the historical orientation of various literary periods. We're looking at works of literature in terms of genre, in terms of authorial intention. The course is meant to enrich students' research and writing skills and oral skills. It's meant to introduce students to just a love of English literature. But I also say to students, it's really important to understand that literature is also essentially a political act. And what do I mean by that? An author takes us into a world of imagination, an imaginary world, an alternative world in which we have to get out of our own hearts and minds and bodies and into the literary universe of somebody completely different. That's essentially political for me. And acts of literature are also political in the sense that they tell us something about the world that's usually sometimes disturbing, sometimes uncomfortable. And that's necessary because to lapse into a sense of conformity or a sense of comfortability about the world, that's the kind of thing that gets us into trouble over and over again in history. So there's three works that come to mind in the course that speak out to me most powerfully. One is William Blake's Marriage of Heaven and Hell. William Blake, writing just after the French Revolution, romantic poet, author, this is my period, talks about the liberation of humankind and putting the imagination to work in order to break out of religious doctrine, political doctrine, so forth and so on. And in that text, there is a moment where Blake is in a church with an angel, and they descend into the bowels of the church, underneath the church, into the roots of a tree that's hanging over a huge abyss. And the angel shows Blake a vision of an apocalyptic world, a horrific world, a disturbing world, dark, fiery. And Blake is horrified by this. And the angel leaves him there, dangling in the root over the abyss. And the angel departs and goes back up into the church. And the minute that he leaves, suddenly the scene changes utterly. And Blake sees a pastoral world, a beautiful world, a colorful world, a world of his imagination that suits him far more than the world that the angel showed him. And the end of that particular section of that text, Blake goes back to the angel, and the angel says, "How the hell did you get out of this abyss and come back to me?" Blake says, "Because when we were down there, I saw the world according to your perception of things. And the minute you departed, I could then see the world according to my perception of things. The world was left for me to understand and make sense of, as it were." But here's the important thing. Blake doesn't dismiss the angel's perception of things. Instead, he establishes a dialogue with the angel. He has a conversation with him. And they don't attempt to resolve their differences. They don't attempt to eliminate the difference between them. They attempt to communicate with one another about their different worldviews, as it were. This is why the poem is called The Marriage of Heaven and Hell, in which Blake says, without contraries, there is no progression. Another text I teach at the very end of the course is Toni Morrison's The Bluest Eye. And in her afterword to that novel, her very first novel, brilliant first novel, she says this. She critiques her own work, and she says, "I have problems with this first novel because I think I was trying to touch my reader, but I'm not so sure that I moved my reader." And that's a profound statement for me. What's the difference between simply touching a reader, reaching out to them, and moving them, which is to say, moving them to action, to think differently about the world? That phrase sticks out in my mind. Another text that I teach at the very end of the course, in the middle of teaching right now, is Tony Kushner's Angels in America. And in that text, Prior Walter is dying from AIDS. It's set in 1985. Dying from AIDS, and he's visited by an angel, and the angel says to him, the angel gives him what's called the Tome of Immobility, and he says, "Here's your chance to check out, to go back, to be eternal, to go back to heaven and not have to worry about death and pain and suffering and division and difference and everything else." Except at the end of that play, two plays together, Prior hands the book back and he says, no, bless me, I want more life. I want to go back to the world of the everyday. I want to go back to the world and see if I can make a difference in it. See if I can understand all the sexual, racial, religious divisions and differences that have turned my world upside down, as it were. But that doesn't mean that I want to dismiss that world. I need to go back and live in that world. Hannah Pitt, who is the mother of a Mormon in this play, says, An angel is a belief. It lifts you up. But if it lets you down, reject it. Seek for something new. And I always want to say to my students, explore, seek for something new. Teaching literature, learning literature isn't just about acquiring hard skills or soft skills or whatever we call them. We want you to acquire those things. We want you to take your degree forward, and we want your degree to matter for you, help you get a job, help you move forward in the world. But we want you, more than that, to have a sense of what literature has taught you about your life and the kinds of values that it's teaching you about your life. And above all, we want to know that literature has taught you empathy and tolerance, because it's got you out of your mind, your body, your set of preconceptions into those of somebody else. It's a way of allowing you to enter into the world without any preconceptions, such that you have to figure out what it is your perceptions are going to be. And if we've done that for you here in the Faculty of Arts and Humanities, we've done our job, but more importantly, you've done your job as a citizen of the world. Thank you.